Welcome to GIA Enrollment Insights Week Part 1, Enrollment in this Moment, Truth and Insight Across Education Segments. This candid conversation looks at the current challenges and opportunities facing the community college segment. Joining us today is Dr. Olivia Rosas, Interim Vice President of Student Services at San Bernardino Valley College, and Dr. Matthew Morin, Assistant Dean of Intersegmental Partnerships at Chaffey College. Let's listen in on their honest discussion as we strive to gain a better understanding of the enrollment landscape here in the Inland Empire.
My name is Matt Morin. I'm the Assistant Dean of Intersegmental Partnerships for Chaffey College, and I'm really excited to be attending GIA's Intersegmental Roundtable on enrollment in the IE.
Thank you, Matt. And I am Olivia Rosas, and I serve as the Interim Vice President of Student Services here at San Bernardino Valley College. And I'm also very happy to serve and be part of the GIA Enrollment Insights Roundtable.
I'm excited for this conversation about enrollment in the IE. I think it'll be interesting to compare our two institutions' perspectives.
Yes, it's been a challenge, to say the least. The silver lining is that it's not just particular to our local, community colleges, but it's a national trend, in terms of the decline in enrollment, mostly due to the COVID-19, pandemic. And certainly we didn't think it would last this long. I'm optimistic, however, and hoping that we can bounce back. I think we know from research that community colleges that served underrepresented or underserved low-income communities have been hit the hardest with the pandemic, and I know that has been that has hit hard for community colleges because we serve a lot of those populations of students, more so than four-year campuses. So it's been a challenge, but like I said, we're optimistic to bounce back and to meet students where they are.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because, to have a 16% enrollment dip on average across the entire system is almost like, it's an unprecedented gash to enrollment that we've never seen before in our system. And in San Bernardino County and the IE, where we do have higher rates of low-income populations as well as lower educational attainment, we see that average at a higher level, and which speaks to what you're talking about with it's the most disproportionately impacted communities that have been hit hardest and are least likely to be able to continue their education. But what also strikes me as interesting is that before the pandemic, there was also this sort of gradual decline of enrollment that had been taking place. But that gradual decline in enrollment was not reflective of significant gains in educational attainment in the populations that we serve. So while our enrollment was declining, our educational attainment still wasn't, it's not like we fixed the problem of educational attainment, which is why people weren't going to college. It's actually like community colleges and higher education in general were facing even before the pandemic, a value proposition challenge to make sure that we are important and meaningful and that our community also is able to have the resources and support to utilize the resources that we bring them. And that was a pre-pandemic problem. And the pandemic just kind of put that on steroids.
Right.
And just basically level set where those families, especially because children couldn't go to school, right? Families who didn't have the resources to be able to pay for childcare, to be able to figure out how to balance work plus family obligations because of economics, because of educational status, because of race. All of those barriers that are systemic kind of exacerbated a pre-existing problem. And I don't know if bouncing back will look like anything that was before, because even before it was like the signs of it's almost like a cancerous illness that existed before, and we never fixed that. And so I'm really curious to see what bouncing back looks like. What do you think of that?
I completely agree. I think it exacerbated what we were already experiencing to some extent. And bouncing back is going to take time. It's not going to be a one cycle type of phenomenon. You know, it's not going to be, oh, by next fall, we should be where we were 2 years ago. It's not going to be that. It's going to take time. It's going to take intentionality on our part to reach students and meet students where they are, right? I know that at San Bernardino Valley College, where I serve as the interim Vice President of Student Services, we are being more intentional about our outreach efforts, about recruitment and about retention, right? We're doing things to spark interest, to enroll new students, also to re-engage those that left, right? Those that stopped out, that are dealing with a lot of different, factors that have prevented them from returning. And also doing more activities to retain the ones that stayed, right? So it's a multifaceted approach. You can't pay attention to just one aspect of your enrollment, because enrollment is a side, it's a step, right? It's not just one thing. It's you get your inquiries, you get your applications, your admitted students. Then they have to register, then they have to do orientation. So what are we doing at each step of the enrollment funnel to be able to retain them and then graduate them? I mean, it's one thing to get them into the campus and get them registered, but if they're not making progress to degree or earning a certificate or joining the workforce, then it's a challenge.
Yeah, and I think it's different for each population too, depending on the pathway. Our two institutions face in our region, we have a little over 20% of the population who could benefit from English language learning, who are ESL. And reaching ESL students is a very different type of enrollment pipeline than, say, students who have a high school diploma, who are English only speaking, who are looking for a degree on a pathway to a bachelor's degree, as well as many students. I mean, the harsh reality is that most of the students who enter into our system don't and never did graduate with a degree or a certificate. And so writing that challenge is really important. I think creating pathways where our ESL and under-degreed population, students who don't possess a high school diploma, who are over the age of 25, for example, which in the San Bernardino region is around 20%. That's much bigger than the state average and way bigger than the national average. Figuring out how we can help our English language learners and our adults who don't possess high school diplomas to also be able to access the community college, and for us to be able to put them on a ladder to that post-secondary degree or certificate that's going to earn them a living or thriving wage, I think is also really important and really challenging, because we can make our pathways clearer and we can do our outreach to the high schools and try to shore up those linkages, but we still have a huge population of folks that kind of exist outside those traditional transfer realms. And, 20% is in both the ESL category and the adult without high school diploma category. Those are huge, dangerous numbers to be playing with in a county as big as ours, with as quickly growing population as we have.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like has to be intentionality and intrusiveness, right? And high touch mechanisms, to serve all these different pockets of, populations for our students, because it's not a one size fits all kind of approach. It's not going to work if we try to do the same thing for everybody. I know on our campus, we are collaborating in strengthening our collaborations with the instructional side, both the career, technical ed, with the academic side that wants to help students transfer if that's what the student decides. We're really, focusing on providing that financial relief to students through our HERF and CARES Act, funding. We're trying to also erase any previous debt that students had, because we know that the financial aspect is one of the barriers, right, that a lot of our students face and prevents them from continuing. We have our Books Plus program where we have, free rental books for students and course materials. We are, for the spring 2022, increasing our in-person courses compared to what we had, in fall. And then targeting messaging, that fits students' need. If it's a program, a group of students for CTE, then we carve, and craft something that it's going to be applicable, to them. We're using, all of our social media platforms and texting and print and digital ads, phone banking campaigns, just to, again, re-engage students that may have left us. And now we're trying to, we're offering also in-person campus visits, small groups, right? And following all CDC protocols in terms of, masking and that. And then little by little, we're increasing our programs and our events on campus and in person.
I'm curious, you mentioned, offering more face-to-face course offerings. And I feel like we're all in a similar predicament across the community college system, in that we're sort of like, we're existing in this new reality now, where prior we saw year over year increasing demand for online courses, especially in asynchronous modalities. And the Chancellor's Office data on that is really clear. And at our institution, it was almost always over 50% growth in online year over year, which is massive. And it actually was capped by the numbers of offerings of sections that we could provide, which says something. It's not like we were even meeting the demand. The demand was greater. And then the pandemic sort of forced us into this majority online framework, where all of our colleges, at least for the most part, minus CTE programs that really couldn't easily pivot, we all pretty much became online colleges. And moving forward, we're sort of now left with this fork in the road with, what is that tipping point at which we are going to be offering more face-to-face classes than our society wants anymore, now that we've moved so much in the direction of offering so much of our courses online and asynchronous? I don't think that this applies equally to the four-year segment and to the high school segment, the K-12 segment. I think K-12 and four-year both exist in a world where face-to-face majority courses still are a significant kind of part of their educational framework, much more so than community colleges, because of the fact that four-year institutions, four-year universities are residential, and K-12 institutions, you're dealing with minors who really do require that close contact, and it's compulsory education. It's like as much about community and the support to the parents as it is about the education. But for community colleges, we are majority adults who are working, have families, and I suspect that's why we see a much more aggressive hunger for online asynchronous courses, just in the data, right? Like I know many of our professors feel emotionally like students want their courses to be online, I mean, face-to-face, but that's actually not what we see in the data. If we really have honest conversations, we see still a majority of our students are not even opting for the face-to-face options that we offer unless they're in CTE. And so, yeah, I'm just curious, where do you think that line is when we go back? Like, do you see us going back to the same, is it 50-50 or is it, yeah?
Yeah, right now we are looking at 50-50. You know, we were about 38, 40% in person for fall, but we are seeing more students registering for in-person classes, you know, but we're only week 2 of, you know, spring registration. So that's what the data is telling us. But, you know, when we surveyed the students, and although the majority of the ones that answered said, I prefer online, we didn't dig deeper into why, right? It was just a full survey, a yes or no kind of question and answer. So, but we are hearing from the students that are coming to our on-site, in-person type of programs or events, or that come to our offices to seek, you know, support services. They want that in-person, you know. We know that online is not, you know, the answer for everyone. You know, if those students that are preferring to do online, they're able to be successful in a virtual environment. A lot of our students, you know, are not. They don't have the technical width to, you know, because they live in multiple family homes. Their environment doesn't lend itself, right? They may have technical difficulties, or there's a lot of interruptions, or, I mean, we know of students that are in parking lots, right? That are, you know, at Starbucks, that are, you know, trying to connect. We also know that some science courses need to be, you know, in person because of the labs. And so we're studying all of that to see what is the best way. And again, we have to make adjustments. We have to be nimble, and we have to meet students where they are. And we have to listen, right? It's not something, virtual learning is not for everyone, not because they don't want to, it's because they don't have the capability, you know, to be able to connect the way to other students connect. And, you know, speaking of, you know, concerns, what are some of the things that students are, you know, concerned with right now? I would say the pandemic is still here. You know, I was driving, I can't remember what freeway, but I saw it here in the Inland Empire, and I saw a billboard that said, that read, you know, we're done with COVID, but COVID is not done with us. Right? I mean, it's still very much, you know, it's prevalent. It's here. So many students are, you know, have lost, you know, family members, have lost friends, loved ones so they're very cautious. They're scared. So they want to make sure that our campuses are ready for them. You know, what are we doing as a campus if we want to re-engage and bring them back? Is it safe? Right? And they're also dealing with family responsibilities, with work, with housing and food insecurity, you know, and also their own mental health. It's a lot. It's a lot to take on, you know, a lot to digest, a lot to resolve, and you know, it's tough right now.
I think, you know, back when we were talking about different populations, you know, your comments resonate a lot with what we're seeing in the difference between the overall enrollment decline in the community college system, which is around 16%, versus what we saw in the specific adult education space, which are the students who are most disproportionately impacted. And in the adult education community college and adult education consortium, enrollment data from before the pandemic, the enrollment dip was close to 40%, that's a huge difference from 16% overall. And like you said, it has much more to do with access to resources that are in some ways even out of the community college system's control. But we as representatives of the community college probably need to be very loud about as a main differentiating quality from the 4 years. That's really important that we advocate politically that the resources that our students need also have to be part of that social welfare framework that exists. High access infrastructure for broadband internet, that classes like the ESL population, which was that population that was hit the hardest, right, for enrollment dips, those are primarily best served as face-to-face classes. Those aren't going to be online classes. And we also have a huge unemployment problem that existed before the pandemic, but we're still, like now the unemployment in the IE or in San Bernardino County is 6.6%. So it's still double the 3% that it was before the pandemic. It's going down, but people can't take on more education if they don't know month to month whether or not they're going to get that job, or whether or not their kids are going to even, maybe they get sick at school, maybe they get that positive COVID test and then they have to quarantine at home for 2 weeks. Most employees can't take 2 weeks off at a moment's notice. And so then they lose that job. So like you said, the pandemic is not done with us. And we need more. It needs to be more than just the community college system. It really needs to be a national effort, which is a great thing about the infrastructure plan. Hopefully there'll be more support coming in addition to that. But right now, the floor for most of the population that we serve is falling out from under them. And we need more social supports to make sure that they can even attend community college.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, Matt. I think, when we look at the national level, help is coming and we hope that helps us, right? But in the meantime, locally, strengthening the collaborations with K-12 and with 4-year, colleges and universities in our area, I think that's key. Because I think we can really serve our communities better by being partners, in helping our student population and families, because parents and families are influential in the decisions that their students, their children's, make. So it's important for us to have those conversations with our counterparts at the K-12 and at the colleges and universities. Access to data for me is one of the areas where we can certainly improve, where we can, and I know because of FERPA regulations and so forth, we're not able to do a lot, but even if we were to look at, let's say, students that went to a 4-year that stepped out or were on probation that are no longer there, that need to go back to the community college to retake a course or to bring up their GPA, or, we could help them if we know, who they are, and invite them here and tell them, look, this agreement or this memorandum of understanding states if you do X, Y, and Z, this is just, it's a little bump on the road kind of thing. And we can help you overcome that. And then, you can go back and fulfill your, if that's what the goal is. I also think to try to put in place student-centered practices and not be so punitive in the way that we handle how students are doing. I mean, because a lot of it is institutional barriers. We're contributing to our students' demise because we're not student friendly. We're not student centered enough, I think.
I think I totally agree. And I think one of the poison pills that may also be one of the variables that's contributing to our downward enrollments over the last several years, decade, has been the fact that what we provide students at the end of the day can sometimes look like a criminal record, because we give students these transcripts that they are required to report to wherever they go in the past. And if those transcripts have anything on them that suggests that the student failed or, didn't meet the bar of expectations, that student has to carry that record with them everywhere they go. And yet the reasons why students don't pass often have to do with things that are out of their control. And don't even have to do with their ability. They have to do with those social supports that we were talking about, and the supports that the college can provide. And so as a system, and I mean nationally, I think if we're really going to be social justice oriented and racial equity minded about how we provide education, we need to start to step away from certifying failure and figure out new modes of recognizing accomplishment, so that, like competency-based education, we're only certifying when students reach mastery. We're not certifying all the other stuff that they did before that they carry along with them that may or may not close doors for future educational opportunities and employment opportunities.
Absolutely. I completely agree. I think I need to be a little bit more proactive and have those conversations. And again, being intentional, think outside of the box a little bit more, and for the benefit of our students, right? I mean, it's who we are counting on in the future, right? And I think the more we talk about this with K-12 and our four-year schools, the more seamless transitions are, right? And stronger, and we're speaking the same language, per se, to families and so forth. I think that would get us ahead of time. And what are K-12 schools offering in terms of courses? Yes, it's important to increase the number of honors, and IB classes. Not every school has them. Why is that? Right? Again, our low socioeconomic communities, the high schools in those areas have very limited, if any, international baccalaureate courses. But at the same token, college is not for everyone. Some students decide to go career tech or other. What are we doing in that regard? How are we helping, those students as well? Some of the art courses have been slashed. They're not in the curriculum. And, are we serving our students the best way that we can by taking those actions? And I know a lot of it is not district, it's state mandated and whatnot, but we need to resist a bit more, I think, when changes like that come through.
Yeah, I think one key opportunity in that space that you're talking about is in terms of partnership with K-12 districts is dual enrollment. And where there's a big gap, to your point about IB and honors programs, is that there hasn't been in all districts a consolidated effort to eliminate the barriers to dual enrollment, such that high school students, and I mean this on both sides, there's a lot of reasons why. Sometimes it's institutional culture, sometimes it's labor association culture. There might be a lot, it might be labor association agreements, it might be funding for counseling support, but what we know right now about dual enrollment is that most of the students who are accessing it are students who are already college bound. The students who are unlikely to attend college are still not the students that are the majority of students we're reaching with dual enrollment. And I love how you mentioned, career technical programs, because career technical programs, first of all, they in dual enrollment tend to serve students who have a GPA below 2.5, which means colleges can be intentional about targeting students who have lower GPAs and being able to flip the paradigm so that those students actually are already attending college right now. And those programs are also like auto tech or welding or HVAC. Those are programs that are also have a high rate of success and job placement, so that those students can start their college pathway while they're in high school and can get a job that will enable them to continue to further their education if they so choose. But we do a lot to stand in our own way, both at the college and at the high school, when it comes to creating access to dual enrollment.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think, we need to continue to promote the ADTs, associate degrees for transfers, dual enrollment, also collaborating and submitting grants, grant applications, doing career assessment and exploration, taking some of our faculty to the high schools to talk about their experience, right? And I mean all professors, from all the different majors, not just the academic side, but CTE, theater, from different, we have such a wealth of knowledge that we can share, with our students. Because when you talk about careers and job placement, students may say, well, I'm a communications major or I'm an English major, but they don't know how big the scope of jobs, right, that they can get with a certain degree. For some, it may mean a master's degree, but do they know all that it involves and the success, or maybe they will pause and say, well, wait a minute, that's not really what I was thinking, right? But doing that early on, I think there's a lot of room for that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I also think because students change their major so many times, that makes constructing those dual enrollment pathways very complex, because it's like we're dealing with 14-year-old and 15-year-olds taking college courses, doing deep work about making sure that those pathways are intentional. And then I think to the population of students who often come to us after high school, sometimes they're non-traditional students over the age of 24, and they may change their major, they may not be able to continue. If we can start providing digital micro-credentials, some kind of certifications of skills that occur in between the end of a course and the end of a degree pathway, whether it's a certificate or program, that would give students a ladder so that they know that they're making progress, and they can also utilize those digital micro-credentials to represent themselves to employers, to have a better reflection about what it is that they're learning in their classroom and how that connects to the real world. I think one of the problems right now is that the gap between the entering college student, the first-time college student, and the ADT, for example, that point of transfer, is so huge that most students just fall off along the way. And it's really hard to stay on track when you don't even know why it is what you're learning in all of those gen ed classes, for example, even matters. And so, yeah, hopefully we can build more certifications of skills and understanding in between those two spaces so that students can represent themselves with that work.
Yeah, great points. Absolutely. Yeah. And then we also then have also our community, right? So we have K-12, we have us, the 4 years, and then our surrounding community. So how can we collaborate and how can we partner with them? Because again, they're an important factor, an important, part of the success of our college and our students and so forth. So I think, as we try to come out of this pandemic, hopefully be able to host, community programs, where families can congregate and we can provide resources. We can have more parent involvement, parent or guardian involvement. vaccine education campaigns, financial aid sessions, more targeted informational sessions, to make them aware so that they can make informed decisions, but also to let them know that they're part of us, that we're in this together, that we are partners. And as their students, move from one place to another, and we are helping them get through this educational trajectory.
Yeah, I think a big piece of that community too is the employers. Like Amazon is one of the biggest employers in our region, and for you guys, for us, for all the IE. And I think building those intentional partnerships like what you're talking about, so that the employers become drivers for those families, because the employers are employing adults, many of whom could benefit from our educational resources. I think one of the challenges is that employers and employees have a hard time fitting our educational pathways into their schedules and time frameworks, as well as their own pathways for upward mobility within their organizations. And so figuring out ways that we can meet students inside their place of work, where we're partnering with employers so that their employers become partners in the educational pathways, and whatever they're doing at work, we as educational institutions begin to partner on how faculty can begin to certify learning and engage with students so that it's something supplemental to what they're already doing when they're pursuing that job.
Yeah.
Or that income. I think that's another sweet spot with the community that you're.
Yeah. I think also bringing in, employers to our respective campuses to explore, job opportunities for our students. Going, like you mentioned, to employers, visiting with them, having some type of a professional, or staff development type of series where we can offer opportunities for them to come to school if they need retooling, or just exploring a career. I think is also important. It seems like we really kind of connected, with our dialogue, and that was great. I appreciated that.
Likewise, I think we're really working very hard, these days especially, and I really enjoyed talking to you, Olivia, and I think it's great. It's great that we have each other down the street, to be able to work on this problem.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Matt.